to order. Sydney, would you please call the roll?
Senators Bean.
Here.
Berger.
Here.
Bernstetter. Crawford. Gregory. McCreary. Washington.
We have a quorum. We only have one bill on the agenda for today. That's Senate Bill 1005 by Senator Gregory. Senator Gregory, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the members of the committee that showed up today for the hearing on Senate Bill 1005. My name's Senator Curtis Gregory, the 21st District. As representing Senate Bill 10,005 to you today. Normally, I try to go off the cuff as much as possible. With this one, I actually put together some typed up remarks so I can hopefully try and encapsulate most of the thoughts that I have, and then I'll maybe go off the cuff a little bit. This bill is a narrow bill about pesticide labeling, not about approving or banning any particular pesticide, and not about granting immunity to manufacturers. Under federal law, pesticide labels are reviewed and approved by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, otherwise known as the EPA, under the FIFRA, and that stands for the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. Those labels are the legally binding instructions that govern how pesticides are used safely across the country. Senate Bill 1005 simply clarifies that Missouri will rely on that existing federal labeling process when it comes to cancer warnings on pesticide labels. This bill will not eliminate lawsuits, and it does not grant pesticide manufacturers immunity from liability. In fact, the bill explicitly states that it should not be interpreted as providing full immunity from liability. You may hear today that glyphosate has been classified as probably carcinogenic. Tough word to pronounce for a country boy like me. That classification comes from the International Agency for Research on Cancer, otherwise known as IARC, and refers to hazard, not real-world exposure risk. So when we talk about real-world exposure risk, is what I think about is if you're actually using a product. So, for example, for the thousands of people listening online and the some that are here in the room today, a typical ag producer, when I was tank mixing product to go out and spray my fields, would be around 32 ounces per acre, sometimes 24, sometimes 32, sometimes 48, but the average was 32 ounces. So just think about that Gatorade bottle that you go buy when you're a little dehydrated, need a little pick-me-up on a hot summer afternoon. That is what you're going to mix into 10, 15, 20 gallons of water to go spread out on an acre of ground, otherwise known as 43,560 square feet. So that 32-ounce bottle goes over 1 acre of land. For instance, also, if you are buying probably a pre-mixed product, when looking at the label, and I got to do this every summer because I can never remember what it is when I'm making my backpack sprayer mix, it is 3 ounces per 1 gallon of water. So if you go buy a pre-mixed, but when they still actually sold it, and a 32-ounce pre-mix spray bottle, like you get the Windex spray bottle, you used to be able to buy that, this product in those spray bottles. If you back that up into quart sizes, 0.75 ounces of active product inside of that 32-ounce spray bottle that you would go hit the nasty dandelions and crabgrass in your sidewalk cracks. So that's the usage rates that we're talking about. In the same classification category through IARC, also includes things like red meat consumption, working as a hairdresser, and emissions from high temperature frying. So all those good fish fries you're working at, you're in the same risk category as what glyphosate has been put in according to IARC. Senate Bill 10,005 does not attempt to settle scientific debates about any one chemical. Its purpose is much more straightforward: to clarify that pesticide labels in Missouri follow the federal and scientific review process that already governs those labels nationwide, rather than creating a separate state-level standard. Some of the groups across the country or across the world that have also studied this, not only the US EPA, the European Food Safety Authority, Health Canada, Australian Pesticides and Vet Medicine Authority, are all ones that have looked at it and deemed it safe for a label without a warning label for cancer. For farmers and applicators, the label is the rule book for safe use. I know when I'd get certain chemicals, the guy I was buying it from made sure to point out certain things to me of, if the wind is either blowing over this or actually under this, do not go spray. If it's coming from a certain direction, there's crops that may be affected, also don't spray. So the most genius idea I ever came up with when I was an applicator is I went to the fireworks store and I bought a bunch of smoke bombs. and I would stand on the deck of the sprayer, light it, I'd throw it out, and I'd take a picture to prove what direction the wind was blowing out of that day in case anything were to have happened. So getting into the weeds, so to speak, a little bit here. Similar legislation has passed both in North Dakota and Georgia. It's also understanding that Kentucky Senate has recently passed similar legislation, and the state of Kansas is moving on it. Just for the record, glyphosate was introduced in 1974, so it's been used for 52 years, if my math is around correct. Struggle there sometimes also. I think the most important thing also is the EPA has maintained they will not issue a label for glyphosate that state it could cause cancer, as that would be false and misleading according to their information. And as we said before, companies must follow these labels. So I think the most important question before the committee today is, are we going to allow a company that is the only manufacturer of glyphosate in the United States of America to continue to face lawsuits on a failure to warn, where if they were to then warn, they would be going against federal law and potentially being put out of business? When I asked questions on this committee last year, I said, why is Bayer the only one that is getting sued? The response I got was they have the largest market share. And that was one that really struck me as, well, that's intriguing. So I guess I'll wrap it up with those comments for now. I've got a lot of information on here. I think something I will provide to the committee is there's a study done, I think it was North Carolina and another state out towards the East Coast, where they followed farmers, applicators. Some were private applicators, like myself would have been back when I still had a sprayer. Some were commercial applicators and their spouses for around, I think it was like 40 years. And the study concluded that there was no association with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, as that is one of the hardest things to track where anything came from, and that's where a lot of these lawsuits are coming from. And I know cancer is a very devastating disease, and I definitely have compassion for anyone dealing with this, but as I said before, this is about the policy that we are going to try and follow in state for a labeled product when the label is dictated by the federal government.
Thank you, Senator. To clarify, when you talk about when you put 24 ounces the acre, 32, 60, it depends on the poundage of the material that you're using. Some pounds of material are 4-pound material, some pounds 5 pounds. So it just depends on, we're not putting anything extra. It's just putting to what the label says on that particular poundage material.
I just listened to what my spray guy told me. He said, take this right here and you need to put this much in for what you're trying to accomplish.
The other thing, Senator, just to clarify, down in southeast Missouri, we can usually go out and just put our finger up to figure out which way the wind blows.
I wanted to make sure I had photographic evidence that the wind was coming out of some particular direction that day.
I'll help you on that later. But anyway, any questions for the Senator? Seeing none okay, how many people are here to testify in favor? Those against? Okay, so make sure you fill out a witness form, and let's try not to repeat testimony, and let's try to get everybody in. So we're going to go first up with here people to testify in favor of Senate Bill 1005. 1005, please come forward. Oh, and make sure you do fill out a witness form and leave it on the table, please.
Try not to be duplicative, Chairman. Casey Wasser, testifying on behalf of the Missouri Soybean Association in support of Senate Bill 1005. So my goal is to keep this brief and focus on the facts, and to make this simple, I've brought the key points that our policy committee considered when reviewing this issue. So you heard before that glyphosate was introduced into the U.S. agricultural system in 1974 and is one of the most widely used herbicides in the world. After decades of study and real-world use, regulatory agencies around the globe, including the EPA, have consistently concluded that glyphosate is safe when used according to its label and does not cause cancer. Most recently, the European Commission renewed glyphosate's registration through December of 2023 after a comprehensive review that included more than 2,400 studies. At the center of the current legal debate is a single determination by the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, which classified glyphosate as a probable carcinogen. It is important to understand that IARC classifications, as the Senator alluded, evaluate hazard, not real-world risk. Many everyday exposures fall into the same category, including red meat, working as a hairdresser, and very hot beverages. Despite the overwhelming consensus of global regulatory agencies that glyphosate does not cause cancer when used properly, The IARC classification has been used as the basis for class action lawsuits claiming Bayer failed to warn consumers that glyphosate could cause cancer. The EPA has repeatedly affirmed that glyphosate is safe when used according to the label and has explicitly stated that a cancer warning on the label would be false and misleading. They are not going to place it on a product that they approve. This creates an impossible legal situation for our companies. Federal law under FIFA requires pesticide labels to match EPA findings. Companies cannot add warnings that contradict EPA science, yet some courts have ruled that Bayer still had a duty to warn about cancer. That's even though that federal law prohibits them from adding such a warning and contradicts science around the world. It is also important to note that Bayer has won more of these cases than they've lost when they are able to fully litigate and juries are allowed to hear full scientific evidence. However, even with many legal victories, Bayer has already paid out nearly $18 billion in settlements and has proposed another $7.25 billion in settlements. These costs, more than $25 billion, are ultimately passed down to American farmers and my members. If this legal conflict continues unresolved, Bayer may stop producing glyphosate in the United States. This would leave U.S. farmers increasingly dependent on imports, primarily from China, for one of the most critical crop protection tools used in modern agriculture. This is not the direction that we should be heading. The United States should be encouraging domestic manufacturing of essential ag inputs, not driving it overseas. The U.S. Solicitor General weighed in on this issue in December, supporting the position reflected in this legislation and recognizing that FEFRA does preempt state failure to warn claims that conflict with EPA labeling decisions. This issue also extends beyond glyphosate. I know that's what we're talking here today, but the members that I represent, IARC recently added atrazine to the list of probable carcinogens, and honestly, I think they would list just about any product that they reviewed as a possible carcinogen. If this legal conflict is not addressed, it could threaten the future of U.S. pesticide manufacturing more broadly and create uncertainty across our entire food production system. Agriculture policy is also national security. That reality has been recognized at federal level, including in recent executive actions emphasizing the importance of maintaining domestic production of glyphosate-based herbicides. For those reasons, our farmers thank Senator Curtis Gregory for stepping forward to address this legal conflict and support American farmers and American manufacturing. We respectfully ask this committee to do the same, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I'm going to alternate, so first up in opposition to Senate Bill 1005, would you please come forward? Opposition.
Took the smart path.
Hello, Senator. Committee. My name is Ben Mook. I'm here on behalf of MATA. I'm also a farm owner. I live on a farm. We do grow soybeans, corn. We do use Roundup, but I will tell you that I'm in opposition to this bill because the senator's suggestion that the very small amount of it that's necessary to go on a acre of crops is kind of irrelevant. I mean, the fact is, if you can put 3 ounces of something on an acre and it'll kill everything that isn't genetically modified on that acre, you should know that it's pretty potent stuff. And the notion that that something that's that powerful couldn't possibly have any impact on a human, well, it defies common sense, but it also defies the scientific findings. The organization that first found that made that finding isn't the only organization that has evidence on it. I don't personally haven't done a Roundup case. I did represent Bill Bader in his peach farm. I represented farmers across this state and helped with farmers in other states on the dicamba issue. And I can tell you that my experience on the FIFRA labels is that, in our case, in the dicamba situation, Bayer helped ghostwrite those. Well, Monsanto did, but now owned by Bayer. And that the information that was being put forward and the shield that they were trying to use that FIFRA label as was absolutely unconscionable. There wasn't any question, but in that circumstance, they knew the problems that were going to result from using that label, from using dicamba in the method it was going to be used on the double stack cotton and beans was going to happen. They were absolutely unrepentant about it. They expected it to be a business opportunity to make money. And so to say that the EPA label should be the be-all and end-all as a protection for a company that's making a product that they know can cause harm it's wrong for Missouri. It's bad for our farmers. I mean, I have a farmer that leases the land that we have in row crop, and also we do cattle on our place. To think that We are saying that what protects him should be limited to what the EPA puts out, when 5 years ago, this body would have laughed at the notion that we should be relying on the EPA to tell Missouri how to do anything. But now we're embracing the federal government to come protect us and save us. I can't believe that I'm hearing the Republican senator who put this bill forward say that we should be relying on the EPA to protect us. So, I mean, if that surprises me that Missouri would say, federal government, please come save us. And we're going to rely on you and this company that makes billions and billions of dollars selling this product to come tell us that, oh no, we can't do anything different about the label because the EPA says what to do with the label, while at the same time they're backdooring information to the EPA saying, you know what, this should be on the label. Rely on these tests that we did. When I saw documents that said, don't do any more testing on this in the dicamba world because we don't want to have bad results that could hurt our label. So I'm telling you, as an attorney, that the protection that Bayer gets in court, they get to put on evidence in the same way the plaintiff's attorneys do. If they're winning cases, that's what happens. You put on your full case, you win some. If you put on your full case, you lose some. That's the notion of giving a jury all the information they need to make a decision. And in a particular circumstance, a jury can decide that the plaintiff that was exposed to this product didn't suffer from an injury due to a failure to warn. They can say, this person should have had enough information to know, or this person didn't. But that's the joy of the jury system, is they get to hear all of the information. Unlike the 3 minutes each person that came here to talk to you is going to say whatever they want and have it be uncontradicted, unproven, and unchallenged. So I encourage this body to say no to this particular bill.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Berger.
What's Bayer to do if the federal registration process doesn't allow for a warning label?
Pardon?
What is Bayer to do if the federal regulation process doesn't allow for a warning label?
Well, I will say that I don't believe that the federal government won't allow them to. They are involved in that label making process. If Bayer wants a warning on that product, there will be a warning on that product. They're involved in that label creating process. It isn't the federal government comes down from on high and says, this is it, get out. The federal government goes through an entire process to come up with that label, and that is a process that Bayer is heavily involved in.
Are we going to lose the ability to make this in the United States and depend on foreign imports?
Well, I would think we aren't. I think that what we're seeing right now is the corporate version of a strong arm tactic that, you know, if it were happening with an Italian mafia family, we would call it a strong arm job. And I don't believe for a second a company that's making billions of dollars is going to stop selling a product that makes them billions of dollars, even if they have to pay for the harm they caused. I don't think that if it were shown scientifically adequately enough that there was a consensus, which at this point it's hard to imagine the folks in our country coming to a consensus on much of anything, but if, God willing, we should get there, and this product is a carcinogen, and they stop selling it, we'll find another way to deal with this. I mean, that's the point of scientific progress.
How long does it take to get a label?
Well, that takes years to get a label.
So in the meantime, we're supposed to import from China if we put these people out of serving the United States.
So if Bayer had spent the time and money that they've spent lobbying the organizations around the country to pass this law, trying to change that label to put something different on it, Senator, we'd already have it, and it would have probably cost them less than what they're spending to promote this bill in various legislatures. And we currently have Roundup available, and I can't imagine that we're not going to have it available. If they choose to take it off the market, that is a business decision that they're making, not a decision that the government is forcing them into.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for testimony. Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005, please come forward. See if we can come forward without furniture acrobatics there. So,
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Figgenbaum testifying on behalf of Missouri Farm Bureau. We believe that the EPA has the process and resources available to determine whether or not a product is deemed safe and effective, and that when they prescribe a label to a product, that label should be able to satisfy warning needs and use for that product. We also think that this bill creates consistency across all branches of government and reduces regulatory patchwork from state to state and ensures that these products are still available for our members to use. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in opposition, please come forward.
I'm Byron Keelan with the Freedom Principle, and we're in opposition because we don't want to hand direct regulatory authority over to Missouri's chemicals and fertilizers to the federal government. We've seen the abuses of the federal government in the past and undermining our state's rights to ability to set our own safety standards. Aligning this puts Missouri's pesticide and chemical regulations with federal laws like the FIFRA and EPA decisions, effectively ceding control over to Washington bureaucrats who often ignore local realities sometimes. And so Missouri has unique farms, river soils, and communities that demand state-level oversight, not blind deference to federal agencies that prioritize national agendas over our sovereignty. So we, believe that we should be able to decide for ourselves, not rely solely on unelected officials in the EPA. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries in Missouri, want to go on record in support of this legislation. Associated Industries was a party to a lawsuit in California, actually, several years ago, and we received a decision from a federal judge that said that the labeling requirement in California, which had been enacted through Proposition 65, was not able to be enforced on the companies because they would be forced to essentially say something that they did not believe was true in violating their freedom of speech. And so this bill, as we see it, is a way to preempt something like what happened in California, where they tried to impose the labeling requirement, yet the federal government doesn't align with it. So we think this is the best approach, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in opposition, Senate Bill 1005. Opposition, please come forward.
Thank you. My name is Jamie Blair, and I'm an organizer for Missouri Rural Crisis Center. I want to thank the chair and members of the committee for hearing my testimony today. Missouri Rural Crisis Center is a membership-based farm.
We can hardly hear you. If you could pull that a little bit closer to
Okay.
you.
Is that a little bit better?
Okay.
Missouri Rural Crisis Center is a membership-based farm and rural organization that was born out of the farm foreclosure crisis of the 80s. That foreclosure crisis abated, but farm and rural crises did not. Decades of bad policy have put farmers into dire straits again and again. Farmers today are as desperate now as they were in the 1980s, and I know we have members of this committee who farm or have constituents that do that are acutely aware of this. It seems like we're here today to debate complex legal frameworks, and it's all too easy to lose sight of the hardworking Missouri farmers that make up the numbers that we'll discuss. I want this committee to picture just one farmer that they know and care for. Each time we get into stats or studies, I want you to picture your farmer. The basis of our great nation is justice, the idea that anyone who is harmed or believes that they have been harmed can take it to the courts and seek a legal remedy. It's fundamental to who we are as a people. The idea that we would curtail that right for some of the hardest working, most dedicated, and least likely to complain people in our state is an insult to injury if I've ever heard one. Industry doesn't want to curtail this right because it's frivolous or being found without merit. They are trying to change the rules mid-play because they are losing. They aren't just trying it here either. They have introduced the same or similar bills in 11 states. They're trying to get their immunity built into the Farm Bill, not to mention appeals to the Supreme Court. So I want you to think of your farmer and the huge machine that is trying to take away their voice, and ask yourself, do you stand with your friend who gives their all to their craft to put food on tables and steward the land? Or do you stand with the multinational corporations that want to silence them because it's more convenient to their quarterly reports? It's important to note that Bayer just settled a more than $7 billion class action. The primary study that both Bayer and EPA based their safety decisions and labels on has been formally retracted after years of industry knowing that there were problems with the study and citing it anyway. That is a clear lack of transparency, so passing a law saying that the current labels do not constitute a failure to warn when those labels themselves are now suspect, being based on misleading and flawed science, would be incredibly misguided. I want to pause right here for a quote from one of my farmers. Let's not pretend this legislation is about protecting farmers. It's about protecting Bayer from responsibility. I'm a farmer who's used glyphosate since it was introduced, but it is no longer part of my weed control program. It is no secret that glyphosate doesn't control weeds the way that it once did. Herbicide-resistant weeds have reduced its effectiveness, and the industry is already moving on to new herbicides and technologies. The Missouri legislature should stand for accountability, not corporate immunity. Doug Doty, Livingston County row crop and cattle producer. And I can't speak to whether or not people have been properly warned about possible harms and whether or not they have the standing to sue. I am not a judge. But the courts have been ruling for the farmers, and we should let them do their jobs, not carve out a workaround for multinational conglomerates to avoid responsibility. People deserve their day in court, especially your farmer. Please vote no on this bill. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Brad Thielemeyer, representing the cotton producers of Missouri. Our farmers in southeast Missouri want to go on record in support of this legislation.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in opposition.
Good morning. My name is, can you hear me okay with the mic right now? Okay. My name is Maxine Gill, and I'm testifying on behalf of Missouri Coalition for the Environment and our members across the state. We're a statewide advocacy nonprofit organization that works to empower Missourians to protect their environment and their health, and I'm urging the committee to vote no on this bill. This bill would mandate that FIFRA or EPA compliant labels shall be sufficient to warn pesticide users of a given pesticide's potential risks. But the issue with this language is that in the case of glyphosate, a FIFRA or EPA compliant label will not warn its users of its risks at all. This confounding issue is due to a highly criticized 2018 EPA assessment, which claimed, despite evidence to the contrary, that glyphosate is not likely to be a carcinogen to humans and poses no other meaningful risks. An independent panel of scientists commissioned by the EPA itself to review its work found this assessment to be incomplete. Several members of the panel disputed the EPA's findings and found that the EPA failed to follow their own assessment guidelines. In retaliation, one of the panelists was removed. It was later revealed in a document disclosure that the chair of the EPA's Cancer Assessment Review Committee on glyphosate was in regular contact with Monsanto executives. The chair communicated to a Monsanto executive, this is of course before the Bayer acquisition, that he would prevent the Department of Health and Human Services from reviewing glyphosate safety, and said he would deserve a medal for doing so. The same release of documents revealed that Monsanto had ghostwritten a key study alleging glyphosate's safety. According to the released email, they did so by hiring academics to put their name on research conducted by Monsanto itself. The same email stated that Monsanto was attempting to repeat this move with additional research, and I have no doubt that they have. The now discredited study mentioned in the email was officially retracted this year, nearly a decade after it was revealed to have been ghostwritten. This development was spurred by the publication of a paper by two Harvard researchers who critically examined the continued use of the 2000 study despite public knowledge of major ethical breaches, which called its findings into question. Despite these contestations from scientific experts, breaches of protocol, and reliance on compromised studies, this EPA assessment is still being used as a basis for federal labeling requirements. These clear conflicts should be enough to show that an EPA or FIFRA-compliant label is insufficient to warn the public of its potential harms. Issues with glyphosate first emerged shortly after the chemical's registration in 1974, with lab tests as early as 1981. Since then, many studies have validated the link between glyphosate and cancer, culminating in the 2015 World Health Organization finding. The finding was significant because the scientific process requires an exceptionally high level of proof to say that any chemical likely causes an adverse impact at all. Given the abundance of scientific evidence pointing to glyphosate and Roundup's harms, and robust documentation of Monsanto and Bayer's attempts to infiltrate and sway independent scientific processes, it's prudent to remain cautious. Our state must maintain a legal avenue for recourse should Missourians be harmed after using Roundup without sufficient warning of its risks. As we know, as of the end of 2025, Bayer has paid around $11 billion in settlements for nearly 130,000 lawsuits. Now I'm hearing that it's several billion short. This February, Bayer agreed to pay another $7.25 billion to settle an additional group of cases, and there are thousands and thousands of cases pending. Those who would bring claims against agricultural manufacturers have usually been farmers and pesticide applicators who were exposed to these chemicals and later diagnosed with diseases such as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and other cancers. The sheer amount of these cases indicate that there is something very harmful about glyphosate. Contradicting their claims that glyphosate is completely safe, Bayer has repeatedly opted to settle cases out of court instead of proving its safety through our legal system. Bill proponents have attempted to argue that opponents are attempting to ban glyphosate and threaten the nation's food security. Propaganda campaigns have even relied on racist myths and tropes to fearmonger about China taking over our food supply. In reality, Bayer is the only party that has threatened to pull glyphosate from the market, and Bayer itself is a foreign-owned entity. This shows that Bayer is far more worried about their bottom line than the health of Missourians, or indeed any of their customers. This language has been pushed in at least 20 states, primarily as a way to shield Bayer from glyphosate-related litigation, but its ramifications extend beyond Roundup. This bill would disincentivize all pesticide manufacturers from researching, understanding, and reporting health concerns related to their products. Pesticides bound to FIFRA are all poison in some sense. They're designed to kill pests or, herbs or whatever they are designed to kill. This does not mean that they are normatively bad, merely that there is an inherent danger associated with their use that should always be properly disclosed in order to adequately protect users from harm. Yet to protect their profits, these manufacturers are always incentivized to claim that their product is safe. Courts are the only counterweight to ensure that manufacturers are accurately disclosing their products' risks. Without them, we face even more dishonest marketing and suppression of unbiased scientific research than we already see today. Missouri is the show-me state. We must ask Bayer to show us through the appropriate legal avenues that their product is safe, rather than allowing a corporation known for manipulating and harming the public to deny us our ability to sue. We are asking you to vote against this bill in order to protect Missourians, not the profit margins of a multi-billion-dollar multinational company perpetuating harm for the sake of financial gain. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Berger?
Your testimony said there's one study shows redaction, shows the label's not sufficient, isn't sufficient, right?
There's one study that was retracted this year because it was revealed to have been ghostwritten by Monsanto.
One study? Do you recognize the 2,400 studies provided by the EU to approve this through year 2033? Do you recognize those?
Every piece of scientific evidence that I've been privy to shows that there is no consensus on the safety or lack of safety on glyphosate. So essentially, as long as that question is up in the air, as long as it's not a settled matter and there is abundant evidence showing that it does cause cancer, I trust scientists to independently review that and come to their own conclusions.
You
I don't
trust
think we
one
should.
redaction over 2,400 studies?
I didn't say that I trusted, I trust scientists, and I think it's prudent to leave a legal avenue open until we have a definitive scientific finding, and we don't have that yet. There's lots of evidence on both sides.
What about the 30-year study of 50,000 farmers that says there's no direct correlation?
Again, I'm trusting the World Health Organization. I'm trusting the science that I've seen. I myself am not a scientist, and so I'm relying on the scientists to tell me whether or not glyphosate is safe, and I've seen evidence to the contrary.
I think we're picking and choosing one identifying case instead of looking at the major impacts of this. But thank you for your testimony.
Okay.
Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005, would you please come forward?
Mr. Chairman, Shannon Cooper today representing Missouri cattlemen, and I always find it amazing when we sit through these hearings, and I recognize how people who don't operate in our industries tell us how ignorant we are, and I'll use myself as an example, who I've used this product my entire life, as well as most of our members, and the statements that we're just not smart enough to understand how to use it safely, and that it's really a dangerous drug based on, one, study always amazes me. I'm equally amazed when people want to tell companies how they should manage their economic viability, and that there should not be concern about losing our one domestic source for this product. And anybody sitting in this room that actually farms for a living recognizes what's going on in the past 10 days and how fertilizer prices have skyrocketed. And I can only imagine if we had no domestic production and had to depend on a foreign country for this chemical, we'd be in a much greater risk than we are today. And I hear the buzzer, so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'm not sure where that buzzer.
That
comes
buzzer
from.
wasn't for me? Good, then I'll keep talking.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Ryan, you know as well as I do, agriculture is very tough. And we set in here today to try and make sure that we have a product that is safe, that is affordable, that has been proven effective. And that, we're not ignorant. We know how to use these things safely. There's very little evidence out there that a label is going to change things. And these lawsuits are real. The billions of dollars of losses are real. And at the end of the day, the producers like you and myself are the ones that bear this burden. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I can tell you that in farming right now, I'm not sure the word profit margins are there. I can tell you on my farm they're
You need
not.
some cattle right now because that's the only bright
Well,
spot out there.
I won't disagree with you at all there, but I will tell you that I want a product that works. I've got to use it one time. I can't afford anything that doesn't, and I have used products from China, and I can tell you that their efficacy is very, very subpar.
Yep.
So anyway, any questions for this witness? Thank you for testimony.
I feel like I got off very easy today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up in opposition. Opposition. Going once. Nope.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and esteemed members of the committee. My name is Carolyn Neiswanger. I'm here on the behalf of the Sierra Club and our 11,000 members statewide. I'd like to first thank the committee for their time today, and I'd also like to thank the committee sponsor for your work on this bill, especially regarding the corporate immunity provision, and as also his comments on the IARC studies. However, the Sierra Club would like to go on record in opposition to this bill, and I'm here just to offer a few comments as to why. I promise I won't repeat what others spoke to in opposition as well. We have spoken in opposition to this bill in years past, and our reasons kind of remain the same, but I do just want to be very clear about something. The chapter does not oppose the sale and the use of pesticides, specifically glyphosate-containing products. We are very aware that these are very efficient products. I can even speak to these, to the efficiency on a personal basis. My mother, who owns about 60 acres out in Jefferson County, uses glyphosate-containing products on a regular basis to maintain our property. But our biggest concern, and just why I'm speaking in opposition today, is that failure to warn issue. And like I said, I won't repeat what others have very eloquently already stated, but I do want to just address Senator Berger's concern about the one study, the retraction, because that was something I was going to speak on, but my colleague from MC very eloquently talked a little bit about it. So I just want to say that it's really not necessarily about one study deciding the science. It's the concern that this particular study was widely cited as independent evidence or safety, and whether the fact that it was later retracted because of undisclosed industry involvement, that just raises questions about how the scientific record was built and whether regulators relied on the evidence that wasn't independently that wasn't as independent as it appeared. So that's just my comments, but I totally understand your argument to the otherwise. But I just wanted to offer that. But for those reasons, we are in opposition, and happy to take any questions to the best of my ability.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Berger.
What's your comment about the 2,400 studies by the EU that says different than what the one that you guys cherry picked?
Yes, absolutely. And I would refer to my MCE colleagues' comments as well to that. And I do see the argument against that. It's rather just that this one study was very widely used, and I just wanted to make a comment on that.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brent Tempiel here on behalf of the Missouri Pork Association. Most of our members are crop farmers as well. They buy a lot of soybeans and corn. I don't think any of my testimony is going to change the votes on this committee, so we'll just go on record in support of this bill.
Any questions for this witness? Thank you for testimony. Next up, in opposition to Senate Bill 1005. Anybody here for opposition? Next up, in favor. Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Tony Benz, representing the Missouri Agribusiness Association, and we'd like to go on record in support. MOAG members include agricultural retailers, manufacturers of pesticides. MOAG members work directly with farmers to address weed control in crops. The Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, FIFRA, was enacted by Congress and is administered by the EPA. With FIFRA, pesticides are subject to rigorous scientific testing regarding health and safety and must be evaluated and approved by EPA's career scientists before products can be sold, distributed, and applied in the United States. FIFRA gives the EPA the exclusive authority to determine labeling and packaging requirements, and those labels must reflect EPA's scientific conclusions. EPA's risk assessment process is the most comprehensive in the world, balancing the need for pesticides with the risks and making it regulatory decisions based upon the best available science. If FIFRA is ignored, then Missouri's farmer customers will eventually have less modern agricultural tools available to them. As a result, many farmers will go out of business and agribusinesses will suffer. Given that EPA's risk assessment process is the gold standard, this legislation simply makes it clear that EPA's labeled pesticide has sufficiently satisfied any and all warning label requirements regarding the health and safety. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions to this witness? Thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor, I'll ask again if there's anybody, any show of hands, anybody here in opposition. Just want to make sure we got everybody. So next up in favor, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jared Hankinson, representing the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I do not have anything to add to testimony that has been provided prior to me, so I will just go on record in support. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor of Senate Bill 1005, please come forward.
Good morning. I'm Dusty Collins. I'm a farmer from Howe County, southeast of West Plains. So we operate a multi-generational farm, primarily corn grain, silage, soybeans, and cow-calf pairs. Our major focus is on no-till. The thing that concerns me the most is no-till and cover crops are not possible without glyphosate. They're just not. We went through a glyphosate crunch in about 2020 where we were concerned we weren't going to have availability of product. That forced us to ration for burn down. They were cycling lists of alternate products, which wind up being mixtures. You don't have the efficacy that you need for a good, clean burn down. I mean, that puts that crop at risk. So that leaves us with an alternative of tillage, which in Missouri, I mean, southern Missouri, Howe County, soil conservation is huge. I personally know a family in 2017. We had a flood, Howe County did. They lost 8 inches of topsoil. That's 4,000 years of soil development. It's gone. Like, they don't farm that field anymore. That's the thing that concerns me when we start talking about losing these tools. So I just, in summation, the elimination of glyphosate access would consequently compromise agronomic, environmental, and financial viability of agricultural operations, while paradoxically increasing the per acre pesticide product use, thereby elevating potential exposure to products. Like, we would have to use more products to do what we're doing now, right? So that's not limiting our chronic exposure, right? That's multiplying it. So what are we even talking about? So I don't know. Sorry, I don't do this much.
You're doing great. So any questions for this witness? Senator McCurdy.
I just want to say thank you for being here. I can tell you probably don't do this every week like a lot of witnesses, so just thanks for taking time out of your day to come to the state capitol.
Sure. Senator Berger.
Yeah, I was going to echo that too. Thank you for being here to testify. You know, all the ag groups, all the farmers, anybody that's involved with farming supports this. But then we have people that aren't involved in agriculture, have no idea about farming whatsoever. They're against it. So this just makes sense. I think like you coming forwards today to testify, I know you don't do this on a regular basis, but I think it carries a lot of weight, and I appreciate that.
I'll just say the same thing. Thank you for making the trip up. I know it's not an easy place to get to from Howell County. So anyway, appreciate you being here. Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Elena Fork, and on behalf of the Missouri Corn Growers Association, we'd also like to go on record in support of this legislation. We believe this bill will provide legislative certainty to farmers and landowners who rely on crop protection products that are regulated by the EPA. The legal uncertainties that crop protection products face today create enormous concern about whether these products will continue to be available in the marketplace. Crop protection products are a fundamental and necessary tool for effective pest and weed control programs in corn production and are used widely by Missouri corn farmers. So for those reasons, we're in support of this legislation and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions to this witness? Thank you for your testimony. Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005, please come forward.
Good morning. I'm Jess Christensen. I work for Bayer Crop Science here in the U.S., so wasn't planning to testify, but felt compelled to for a few things. I'll keep it short. One, the paper retraction that the opposition has mentioned several times, that was not a study itself. It was a compilation of existing data. The acknowledgement of the work that Monsanto scientists did was transparent in that report. For many years now, regulatory bodies such as the EU, EFSA, the EPA, others have said they have not relied on that for their decisions. EPA has said that they had the original data that compilation report talked about, so they didn't use that at all. EU, their recent approval, reapproval you guys have mentioned or heard about, also didn't use it. It was too old of a paper. So just to put that one to bed. The process itself, speaking of EPA, labeling is super, super regulated as it should be. We cannot add things to the label that the EPA does not say we can add. That is fact. Very rigorous process. Again, EPA has historically reviewed over 6,000 studies of glyphosate. And then the last thing I'll say is profits. So we get this question a lot. We're a big company. We know that. But to be clear, the profit of Roundup is not billions of dollars. You might see a number of sales in our quarterly earnings report. That is not a full and loaded number of what it takes to run that business. It's a commodity business, very low margin. We keep it going because farmers do rely on it. It is a safe, efficacious, affordable product, and it's important to food production. I grew up in Cuba, Missouri, by the way, so I'm a proud Missourian. I know where food comes from. A lot of ranchers and farmers out that way too. So, we gotta, we're trying to keep the business alive, but the reality is it's not a sustainable business model long term if there's not some resolution. That's it. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for testimony. Next up, in favor of Senate Bill 1005, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie C., AC Dinoff, State Public Advocate, and I submitted my electronic format or electronic testimony online. Hopefully, did you receive it? Okay, cool. I'm going to be honest. In years past, I was against it because I was had reservations about the motives. I still have reservations, but it kind of sounds like who's behind the lobbyist who asked for this legislation in SB1005. It sounds like Bayer is driving this bill, but I've thought about this long and hard. And in years past, I've been against it because I thought it had ramifications, gave away liabilities. But the warning label is very important. if every state in our union did their own labeling, did their own scientists, their own research studies, I don't know if they'd come to the same results. And so we could have conflicting labels. What if the product gets transported from, we have 8 states that surround Missouri. What if it gets transported across state lines? Let's be honest. This is a chemical that you take risks, but Missourians take risks each and every day. We take risks every time that we ingest something, we take a risk, or everything that we use in life, whether it's Roundup, whether it's a chemical to wash the floor, wash the outside of your house for algae. There's all kinds of chemicals that have all kinds of long-lasting results. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is the best agency suited for this job. They employ scientists, they do research studies, they work with universities and colleges to look into the in-depths of these products and to break down what the chemicals do and what their long-lasting effect is. Now, what really sold me this year in the legislation is, and I'll quote from the bill, "Nothing in this act shall be construed to grant full immunity to pesticide manufacturers in the state." Let me repeat again, and I quote, "Nothing in this act shall be construed to grant full immunity to pesticide manufacturers in this state." Hopefully I'm not misreading anything or misinterpreting anything. Hopefully this is not a trick bag. But if that statement is written there, I believe in that accuracy, and I believe in accountability and responsibility of Senate bills and House bills in this General Assembly. I want the truth. Every Missourian deserves the truth. And guess what? Roundup is a harmful chemical. I think the farmers, as we heard testimony, know what they're getting into. They know the effects. How many of your neighbors actually read labels of the products and the chemicals that they use? I don't read the labels of every product. And I don't think going state by state for labeling is the way to go. So the last thing that I'll state on the record is if people feel that Roundup is bad, if it's not for them, guess what? This is America. We have choices. If they feel that it's hazardous, I say to them, just do not use the chemical. Don't use it. And for those reasons, I now am in support of SB 1005. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for this witness, Senator Berger?
I've listened to hundreds of your testimonies, but this might have been the best one ever.
There you go.
It really is. I think you did a very, very good job about this.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say, too, one of the witnesses earlier said, think of one farmer and think about how this would affect that one farmer. I think about my 72-year-old brother that still farms, and if I asked him about this, I couldn't say verbatim what he would say because it wouldn't be acceptable in this climate or in this lobby. But we need to get out of the way of the farmers and let them farm and know what they want to do. We're trying to protect somebody that isn't asking for protection. Thank you.
I mean, they have the choice.
They have the choice.
They could use whatever chemical suits them and works best for their soil and their property.
Yeah. We're heading to Bill Gates food if we don't watch it.
Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, Arnie, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody here else in favor of Senate Bill 1005, please come forward. Seeing none, anybody here for informational purposes only? Seeing none. Senator, do you have any closing comments?
I think it's one thing I should have probably mentioned earlier. A lot of times when you're going out and applying product in fields, it is not generally one single sole product. So in this instance, Senators, you obviously know, when you're tank mixing to go spray a field of corn, you're going to have 5 or 6 different products in there. Glyphosate, some type of other herbicide for the weeds, then you're likely putting down an insecticide, sometimes a fungicide, sometimes a drift control retardant, sometimes a water softener, sometimes AMS. So the fact that we are often pointing to just this one product, which by its label does not warn, because the studies have not shown that, find that awfully intriguing. And then just to mention, the 6 slices of bacon I had this morning bacon is listed as a Group 1 carcinogen. And to note, since baseball season is coming up, be very careful with the hot dogs you eat, as those are also listed as a Group 1 carcinogen. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. This will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 1005. I now make a motion to go into an executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are in executive session. I now make a motion to vote Senate Bill 1005 out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. This is the bill that we just heard. We have heard this bill multiple times over the past several years. So is there any discussion on that motion? Senator McCreary.
No surprise, I'm uncomfortable hearing a bill like this and voting on it the same day, just as a matter of principle. I also feel like there are a lot of moving parts on this issue, and I don't feel like the witnesses addressed what was happening at the federal level with the executive order properly. So that, to me, is an example of how I actually need to talk to some of these people later and figure out what's going on. So I just am uncomfortable voting on the same day, but it's your prerogative, Mr. Chair.
Yep, appreciate your comments. So any further discussion? Hearing none, Sydney, please call the roll.
Senators Bean.
Aye.
Berger. Bernstetter. Crawford. Gregory. McCreary. Washington.
By your vote of 4-1, Senate Bill 1005's vote out of committee do pass. Now move out of executive session. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. We are out of executive session. No further business coming for committee. I now make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.
You, a pleasure always.
I'm well, how are you?
I know, we're safe.
It's our safe zone. It's our, exactly. Good to see you, Wasser.
Good to see you.